about hurricane preparedness before, during, and after. Learn about SIDEMA's regional response mechanism to impacted participating states, shelter activation, evacuation routes and shelter location, supplies needed, rules and regulations. Join the Ministry of National Security and Legal Affairs this Thursday from 8 p.m. in its continued public awareness campaign, Disaster Management, a Lifestyle. Be prepared.
Slim, your time my hopes are so high. Living in the positive, and I know good will conquer evil. Jah is here amidst the battle, and I know love will overcome hatred. Oh yeah, living in the positive. Oh children, let not your hearts be troubled. Wipe away your tears and fears, 'cause I know love will conquer evil.
Guests are National Disaster Coordinator Fitzroy Pascal, Acting Senior Met Officer Ithoma James, Elizabeth Riley, Executive Director of SIDEMA, and Glenroy Tuse, Emergency Shelter Chair. Learn more about hurricane preparedness before, during, and after. Learn about SIDEMA's regional response mechanism to impacted participating states, shelter activation, evacuation routes and shelter location, supplies needed, rules and regulations. Join the Ministry of National Security and Legal Affairs this Thursday from 8 p.m. in its continued public awareness campaign, Disaster Management, a Lifestyle. Be prepared.
Good evening to our wonderful listeners. Tonight we have a dream team here tonight with the most distinguished and honorable men who have given service to country over the years. We have Mr. Glenroy Tuse, who is, of course, the local government commissioner and also the chairperson of the chairman of the shelters subcommittee on NIPU. And then, of course, we have also with us, no stranger, especially around that time, Mr. Fitzroy Pascal, should be by now a household name, and the young Ithoma James, the most eloquent and smooth personality within the Met Office. And we have someone who has given a life to public service from a regional standpoint, and she hails from the country of Barbados. And in a while, she's going to introduce herself, and she is the executive director of CIDIMA, and she will, in a while, tell us as to what CIDIMA has been doing over the years to assist countries, not only Dominica, before and after a disaster situation. What we are trying to do within the Ministry of National Security and Legal Affairs is to keep our public informed, not only insofar as it relates to the services that we provide to the Dominican public, but also in order to create a kind of an environment to share information to members of the public, because we believe when information is being shared to the public, we have better citizens, as I've said before, and I want to reiterate for emphasis. Once you're a better citizen, you contribute towards making your community where you're from better and your country on a whole. Tonight, of course, bearing in mind that we had a historic phenomenon, although we're in the hurricane season, but we have not seen the development of a hurricane that early in the year. A hurricane that moved real quickly and caused tremendous damage within the Caribbean, also, of course, as we have heard in Texas. We pray tonight for our friends within the OECS and Jamaica, further afield, and everyone who has been impacted by Beryl, this very dangerous hurricane. So let us start tonight. Firstly, we're going to start, and what we are trying to do here tonight is to try to enlighten the public. And sometimes we hear a number of terms being used to describe weather systems, and we want to ensure that we clarify and bring a certain level of clarity to the listening public as to what do we mean by a tropical storm watch or warning, and before that, how does a system graduate to get to hurricane? You have a wave, a depression, and then a storm, and a hurricane, and then the difference between a flood watch and a flood warning and a tropical storm warning. The difference, and isolated situations emerging from a system that may have passed us, but of course can cause other secondary issues. As we saw last week, we had some tremendous waves we have never seen in the history of Dominica. So tonight, let us firstly begin with Mr. Let me firstly see if we have with us tonight the head of CIDIMA. Are you here tonight? Live with us. I'm not seeing you.
Yes, I am. Good night. Thank you for having me on the show.
Good evening. Good evening. So, Miss Riley, it's so nice to have you.
Thank you very much. It's very good to be here.
Okay, let us start with you and give us an idea, give us an insight as to, firstly, what does, when you say CIDIMA, what does it mean? And what you guys have been doing over the years to make us prepare for any form of disaster, not only limited to hurricanes. And how do you help countries within the OECS and CARICOM to prepare, and how do you assist us after we are struck by a disaster?
Thank you so much for the question. And again, thank you for having me on the show. So it is important to start by recognizing that the region that we live in is one that is very vulnerable to hazards. And there are many different types of hazards that we face in the Caribbean, including the hurricanes, which we know about, floods. We also have landslides, tsunamis, and other types of seismic hazards, such as earthquakes. We have volcanic eruptions, but there are also hazards on the technological side, which can include things like oil spill.
Mm-hmm.
And because we are so vulnerable to so many hazards, it is really important that as countries, as individuals, as communities, that we really look at the actions that we can take to make ourselves more resilient to the impacts of these hazards. And what does that mean? It really talks about when the hazards occur, which we know they're going to occur, what are those actions that we can take that allow us, first of all, to suffer as little loss as possible, but also to be able to bounce back in the aftermath of the hazard impact, to come back to some point of normalcy and even to come back even better. So over the years, SEDIMA has undertaken a number of interventions. We do training in our participating states. We have developed standards across the entire disaster management cycle, including in areas of preparedness, response, mitigation, as well as recovery. We've provided technical guidance to our countries on things like shelter management, policy guidance as well. And of course, with respect to when we have significant hazard impacts on our states, for example, during Hurricane Beryl, we activate what is called our regional response mechanism. And basically, this is a system of horizontal cooperation where the 20 states that make up SEDIMA, we come together to assist one, or in the case of Beryl, many states who have been impacted significantly by the particular hazard. And we do so by strengthening coordination. In other words, there are many different actors, national, regional, international, who want to support these types of response efforts, but we need to do so in a way where it's as effective and efficient as possible. So we have an important coordination role. We also support by providing human resources to countries that are impacted, and we do that in different areas. So we can provide personnel for emergency operations centers, we can support damage assessment, we have teams that can look at relief management and supporting logistics of those relief management movements, telecommunications as well. And we also serve a very important information role. So in the event of significant hazards, we collect information from the countries that have been impacted, and we package that information and disseminate it to audiences who need to know. So we have information on damage, on losses, and importantly, on the needs that have emerged from states that have been impacted. And we channel that information to parties who can assist us, which includes our development partners, other technical partners, including the UN system and other partners, including private sector as well. And we try to match the needs that the country has identified with sources that can supply those particular items. And supporting the entire system is a whole range of partnerships, including with private sector entities. We work with non-governmental organizations, including the civil society, including the Red Cross, and our UN partners as well.
Yes, and let me just take this time out to actually, on behalf of the government and people of Dominica, to highly commend you, ma'am, for the tremendous work you have been doing over the years, along with your organization and your committed staff. And I want to take this opportunity really in the most profound manner to actually commend you for the tremendous work you have done over the years, the manner in which you guys were so proactive and quickly responded to our needs in Dominica post-Maria and even before Maria. And I can recall just recently when we've been threatened by Beryl, Sunday night early, you had a technical meeting with various members within the CARICOM space, and I want to commend you for that. And the level of commitment you have demonstrated over the years is commendable. And so, having said that, now those are some of the things that you do. Just give us an idea as to when a country is hit, and maybe you can give us an idea where are you speaking from now, and I hope I'm not invading you on your privacy. Just give us a sense as to how much you're working, and give us an idea as to how many countries got damaged or impacted, for want of a better term, by burial, and the level of the destruction that this country suffered.
So first, allow me to say thank you so much for the kind words and compliments to SEDEMA. And of course, all credit goes to the team at the SEDEMA Coordinating Unit, who are indeed a very dedicated support to me in my role as Executive Director. So I'm speaking to you from the Emergency Operations Center in Carriacou, which is one of the islands of the tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. And I arrived today. And with respect to the states that have been impacted by Beryl actually threatened 10 of the 20 SEDEMA participating states. The most significant impacts were felt in Grenada and its Grenadine islands of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, and also in St. Vincent and its Grenadine islands, particularly Union, Meru, and Canuan. But in addition, there were also impacts in other states as well, including Barbados, St. Lucia, and Jamaica. But the level of the impact in those states was such that we did not have any requests from those states for assistance by SEDEMA.
Yeah, and then in terms of the magnitude of the damage in the various countries that were impacted the most, do you have an idea as to how significant that was? And take, for example, Carriacou and...
Yes, the impact has been very significant on these islands of St. Vincent and also of Grenada. I had the opportunity last Tuesday, just one day after the passage of Beryl, to do an aerial reconnaissance of all 9 of the Grenadine islands, whether St. Vincent as well as the Grenada's Grenadines. And what we observed at that time has certainly played out in the ground truthing that was done once teams went onto the ground. So the most significant impacts were certainly seen with respect to Grenada in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. And we've had very significant damage to building structures, including housing, and estimates which are emerging from the emergency operations centers put this in the range of somewhere between 90 up to about 95% or so of the housing that has been destroyed. And of course, this has a significant impact on persons as well, because we've had significant displacement where as persons have not been able to find adequate shelter because of the impact. We've had significant movements of persons from the Grenadine Islands onto both mainland Grenada as well as mainland St. Vincent. And in fact, this is one of the things that the emergency operations centers are really working on now, to get a better understanding as to how many persons actually remain in those impacted zones versus those who have moved to the mainlands and are now either with family or in shelter. With respect to St. Vincent and its Grenadines, the worst impacted of the 3, and all 3 were very badly impacted, was Union Island. And I had the opportunity to be on the ground there just 2 days ago. And the devastation it's extensive. And the estimates there are about 98% or so of the buildings and houses on the island having been destroyed. And certainly we saw a lot of evidence of significant storm surge, which has really leveled a lot of the buildings which existed in the coastal area as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very touching, and let's hope that we can come together as we have demonstrated in the past to mobilize the resources and to assist each other in that trying time. So I wish you well and in your endeavor to ensure that CDMA continues to provide the services and the mandate for it was established. But a little later we'll come back to you, and I know you have signed an MOU, which has of course tremendous implication for us in terms of our ability to move emergency supplies for the island. So maybe we can just take a break from you now, and we'll come back to you a little later. Is that okay with you? Or
Certainly.
thank you very much. Okay, fine. Thank you. God bless. Now we have Mr. Itoma, Mr. Fitzroy, and Mr. Toussaint. But I would like to start firstly because with Mr. Itoma James, and we just had burial, and then one of the things that we're trying to do, in our preparedness effort and endeavor, is to ensure that we provide the public with adequate information so they can prepare themselves. There are only certain things that the state can do. And of course, the level of information that is transmitted will help people better prepare, we hope. Now, so we want to place some emphasis on terms that are being used when we have emerging water systems. And maybe we want to start, and a system has formed. Take us through the various graduation process from when the system is formed, and just define it for us step by step.
All right. Well, good night, Honorable Minister, and to all the listeners. Before we even go into all of the definitions and I start spouting off information that may seem confusing and scientific, I would just like to make a plea to the general public that when the Office of Disaster Management and the Met Office come to your communities and do these outreach programs, it is a very good idea to participate so that you can come and in person ask your questions, make light of the things that you may not understand, and try to find out for yourself, because there's no shame or nothing wrong in you asking questions and trying to find out what we mean when we say certain things. And if you think it's not reaching you in a way that you should so that you can react appropriately, then you come and you ask the questions. And if you think that doesn't work for you, then you can reach out and call the Met Office to get some information. But to address your statements, the development of storms, we usually start off by looking at waves most of the times. That is where most of the tropical cyclones that are formed in our region starts. It starts off at tropical waves coming across the Atlantic. They can then develop into tropical depressions, and from tropical depressions they go to tropical storms, and tropical storms to hurricanes, and then you have different levels of hurricanes. You have category 1, 2, 3, and 4, where you start talking about major hurricanes from category 3 and up.
Okay. I wanted to do some qualifying of the various terms. Like we come from a wave and then a depression. How do you determine that we have moved from a wave to a depression?
Well, usually when we upgrade, when it is determined that it is a depression, you have more organization in the system. You can start seeing that circulation in the system, where you have more organization in the thunderstorms and the waves, the winds and the rainfall that is associated with the tropical wave. So there tends to be more of an organization. When you look at the satellite images, which we have so much access to now, you can see a more circular motion in it, and that shows you that there's some sort of development of that system.
Okay, but we just want the public to understand we're in a period where we expect waves, almost on a constant basis, and so when somebody hear about a wave, it might not be an aggressive weather system, but of course they have to also be on the guards. So sometimes, because I got so many calls on people hear a wave, they say something going to happen. But I mean, people need to be at least sensitized to the extent to which they understand that we're in a period, the hurricane season, then we expect to get waves almost every week. Isn't that so?
Yeah, well, the onset of the tropical waves is really what we use most time as an indicator that the hurricane season has truly started.
Right.
So we have tropical waves coming through regularly through the week. At this point, not even one, but two or three sometimes. So it's just that time of the year when we expect there to be increased rainfall because these systems tend to come with increased rainfalls and thunderstorm activities, those sort of things. And we are a tropical island, and this is normal to us. We should expect to have rainfall. It is not something that is strange. We should expect rainfall and thunderstorms. What you can do is listen to the Met Office when they say when the rainfall is going to be significant and you may need to take action. This is where things like flood watches and warnings come into place.
Just to say something, I think it was Monday morning early or after 11 Sunday night, I almost ran under my bed because the thunderstorms and the lightning was spectacular. I had not seen lightning in a while. But it was kind of magical in the sense that it was actually seeing the lightning. So just to qualify what you've just said, and then we move from a wave and a depression, and from a depression to a storm. When can you qualify that a little further to give the public an insight as to when do you determine that the system is a storm?
Well, the qualifier for a tropical storm is when you have wind speeds exceeding 39 miles per hour. Anything between 39 miles per hour and 73 miles per hour is considered a tropical storm.
Right, great. And the reason why I'm asking that because we had a situation when Beryl was threatening and we were placed under watch. And then the advice technically when the center of the hurricane was about 270 miles away from Dominica. The advice was to remove the watch. And a number of people said, why remove the watch? Why couldn't you have left the watch? Because we had serious sea swells after. I wanted just to comment on that slightly to give some perspective to that, so the public can understand what the science is all about and what informs the science to actually advise for the removal of a watch or the inserting of a watch or warning.
Well, a tropical storm watch is issued when you have tropical storm conditions possible within the watch area. And what constitutes tropical storm conditions is wind speeds within the range that I earlier noted, which is 39 miles per hour to 73 miles per hour. So in situations like in Beryl, the distance of the storm, the extent of the tropical storm, the sustained tropical storm conditions did not constitute a watch anymore because we did not expect to have tropical storm force winds extending all the way out to Dominica.
Right. No, I love this, and it says that then we had very historically high waves, and how would you qualify that? I know Fitzroy, although we're not expected to have been impacted by tropical storm force winds on a consistent basis, but we had significant sea swells and waves that were never seen. You're not born yet since Hurricane David. Okay, you're a very young guy. Okay, how do you describe that? Do you describe that as an isolated issue or associated with Beryl that maybe was on the Caribbean scene and as a consequence? And I want to recommend you, and because we did in fact put on an advisory and reference the potential threat from the sea as a result of the effects of Beryl.
Well, I mean, I may be a bit young, but I'm not that young, and I can remember the times of probably Marilyn.
Okay.
When you had similar conditions where the cyclone in question crossed over into the Caribbean Sea. And when that happens, what you get is, because of the cyclonic motion, what happens, the turn, the spin, you are going to get waves adversely affecting the West Coast. And that is something that we should expect. It should not be news to us. And as the Met Office, we saw that, we projected that this would happen. And as such, we ensured that our fisher folks who could actually do something, move their boats, secure their property, were informed that this is something that they should do. Secure their livelihood to ensure that you're not going to lose everything. Now, the heights of the waves is really dependent on the strength of the storm at present. But we should always expect, once you have a storm crossing over into the Caribbean Sea that close to us, that we are going to have higher storm surges. And the information from the Met Office, we have different tools. Like I said, like you have mentioned, we may not be in the position to issue a tropical storm watch because of the waves, but what we have is advisories for the sea. So we have high surf advisories and small craft advisories, and all of these were in place with the expected wave heights and what we expect, what we think can happen. I think where we may need to improve a bit is on reaching out to the communities to let them understand what the threat means to them also, because we placed a lot of emphasis on the fisher folks. And some of the individuals in the communities have given the feedback that, they were not informed. And this is why I started off my statement by saying that if you do not understand the information, there is nothing wrong in calling out to the Met Office and let them, hey, what does this mean for me?
Well, that is what we're trying to mitigate against, to ensure that that the people living on the coastal plains are also equally apprised and warned that they too should act in mitigation and to get themselves to safer grounds, and not only the fisher folks. And that is why we have embarked on this comprehensive outreach program and training and ensuring that we go out to the communities and on the radio, on the social media, and every social media platform to reach the people and to ensure that we actually get to a point where disaster management, preparedness is a lifestyle, and if it's going to be a lifestyle, that we have to be prepared. And that is what we're trying to do. And I want to commend you because we have started a program on GIS, and a program where every three times per week. And I want to commend you for that, for being creative. And I think the idea is to continue with that kind of approach to have the information provided. So then you had a situation, then you had a flood watch. And so that could have been as a consequence brought forward by by the storm. And then how do you get to, what barometer do you use to determine as to whether you should have a watch or a warning, both in terms of a storm or hurricane or flood watch, a warning?
Well, for the flood watch, by definition, it really means that it is possible to have flooding within the area that we have designated. So most of the times you would say that we expect, or it is possible to have flooding at some point, someplace in Dominica within the time frame that we have given out. As it relates to Beryl, we already had the forecasted information telling us just how much rain we could expect. And based on the different thresholds and what we have experienced in the past, we know that this amount of rainfall could cause flooding. While there was still some uncertainty as to where exactly this rainfall would happen and at what time exactly it would happen, we were of the understanding that it would be necessary to put a flood watch in place because the flooding is possible. When or if we think that flooding will happen or is expected to happen or is already happening, that can be changed to a flood warning. So we have these different mechanisms of warning and alerting individuals. Also, along with our regular daily forecasts, if we see that there's possibilities of heavy rainfall, we understand that we have rock falls and landslides that can happen in different areas that can be brought on by excessive rainfall. So even then, we put those information in the forecast in our everyday if we think that there's going to be heavy rains, because it may not cause the flooding in everywhere in the country, but you may be living in an area that is particularly vulnerable. And while we may not be able to pinpoint where exactly these events may happen, we just want you to be informed, so we ensure that we put that information in there when we see the possibilities.
Okay, good stuff there. Let us go across to Mr. Pascal, the coordinator of the Mr. Pascal of ODM, Office of Disaster Management, and let's look on a broader perspective at the whole hurricane preparedness, and before, during, and after. And just give us an idea. Firstly, you heard that if you're placed under a watch and then a warning, what is the level of preparedness as a move from a watch to a warning that the ODM would embark on?
Okay, good night.
Can you speak closer to the mic, please?
Good night to all your listeners. Also, I want to acknowledge the presence of Miss Riley from CDMA, and also to my fellow guests here, Mr. Tuse and Mr. James, and to you, the host, Honorable Minister. Just to continue from where Miss Riley left out in terms of preparedness, and we define preparedness as to anticipate or to respond and recover from impacts. And we know that there are different levels in terms of watches and warnings. Where watches, you may have the event, it is possible, and when warning, the event is imminent. We put in all this aside, and we want persons to, like the theme song says, adopt preparedness as a lifestyle. Disaster management should be a lifestyle. Mr. James mentioned it, that we live in the tropics. So during that period, June 1st to November 30th, we're going to have these tropical systems traversing the region, and as a result of that, you're going to get heavy rainfall, and which may cause some unpleasantries for certain areas. So we're asking persons before the season to plan ahead. Do not wait for the season to catch you off guard. You have 6 months of quiet time and 6 months of the Atlantic hurricane season. So we're asking you during that quiet time, quote unquote, to plan ahead so that you can be better prepared to effectively anticipate, respond to, and recover from any impacts. And some of the actions that one should take before the event, you ensure your surroundings are safe. And this should be something simple for us here in the region and in Dominica, where we should practice trimming our trees, and even as part of our respect to our neighbors. So we should trim trees and clear drains, become better citizens in our communities. We can go further in terms of having plans, and we can have family plans, we can have communication plans, we can have evacuation plans. And for the family plans, we should decide who will carry out these specifics. You have 4 persons in a family, you have the mother, the father, the son, the daughter. You should assign responsibilities to each of these individuals and ensure that they carry them out during times of disaster preparedness. For shelters, you should always know where your shelter is located. Even if you live in a sturdy structure, as your backup plan, you should ensure that you know the shelter nearest to you and also that evacuation route. If you need transportation, you will decide who will be the persons or who is the agency that will provide that transportation. Some of us have persons that are challenged in the household, so we need to ensure that we know how the transportation method will come about. In terms of your structure, ensure that your structure is sturdy. It can withstand, or it is weather ready. In terms of your doors, your roof, your windows. In terms of your communication plan, know who to talk to, when to talk to that person. Ensure that you have alternate means of communication, and know who are the persons having that emergency contact. Of course, you should ensure that you have your phones charged, so that you can ensure that the communication plan is effective. In terms of supplies, have supplies for 72 hours. Ensure that you have water, dry foods, medication, documents, your clothes. You should have some other clothes, lighting, cash, and of course, I mentioned it earlier, the charger for the cell phone. If you own a car, you should fuel your car. Store drinking water in a clean container, and secure your building. And also, sometimes we leave out these your pets and your livestock, but you need to make arrangements for your pets and your livestock. And all these are things we should be doing before there is announcement of any weather system, before the before the start of the Atlantic hurricane season. In terms of your livelihood, protect your livelihood where possible. And when I say livelihood, I mean your workplace. You should support preparedness on the job, because that is your livelihood. After the event passes, you need to go back and earn for your living. So you should ensure that you support the preparedness on the job. And by that, you can assist in the creation of your disaster plan at the organization. If there is one, you must become familiar with it. Know the details to be carried out, similar to the family plan, but you're just upgrading it to your work environment. Consider the security of the facility, including the protection of records and equipment. And every time we hear that we're under warning, the workplaces, I know they have their disaster plans, and they ask their employees to ensure that they secure the computers and their other assets. And you should plan for the resumption of work and to return to work for normal operations. So all these things we can do before the event. During the event, you should be indoors. Simple. You should stay inside, away from windows, glass doors. Listen to the radio and the designated sources for official information and any instructions. Listen for the progress of the system, whether it's a weather system or a seismic event. Keep the phone lines clear. I know people like to go on their phones and chat, but keep the phone line clear, except for serious emergencies. You should remain alert. And I know some persons may want to go to sleep during that time, but stay alert, remain alert, listen for unusual songs. If you hear trees cracking, boulders knocking, coming down the waterway, you should look out for these things and evacuate early if you are told to do so. And in terms of the flood watch and the warnings, do not walk or swim or drive through any flood waters. So, but I think in essence, during a weather system, persons should remain indoors. After the event, after the all clear is given, you can probably go outside, but just be mindful that you could have down trees, down power lines around the place, so you should ensure that you exercise extreme caution when moving around. If you have medical attention, you should get some medical attention and ensure that your family is okay, your neighbors are okay, and your community on a whole is okay.
Before we go to after, I'm very happy that you made reference to what people should be doing during a disaster situation. Last week, when burial, after burial, actually, the impact of burial, and the threat that was actually posed by the sea, and why the waves were actually really blasting, and the coastal plains, and also in Roseau, the Boulevard, you had people trying to brave the waves and with the phones and making videos. What admonishment or word of caution do you have for those people?
We always advise against that. It is not mandatory unless we're under state of emergency, where we're under a curfew situation. But normally we strongly advise against these operations, and that's why I said earlier on that we want to encourage person to stay indoors. Even if the all clear is given, we drop the tropical storm watch or the tropical storm warning. This is a time for first responders, emergency responders, to carry out assessments of what just transpired. So only emergency personnel should really be on the road, doing some evaluation as to the extent of the damages. But the ordinary citizen should try to remain indoors and limit outdoor activities. But we strongly advise against these persons wanting to be the first to have these videos of what is going on, like what is going on the bayfront or along the coastline, because you can get yourself in a situation where you will put the first responders, the emergency responders at risk to come to try to rescue you or to save you.
Okay, so let us go to after now. As we are now 7 minutes after 9 o'clock, then we have to go to Mr. Tuse. And then if you want to call in the next 5 minutes, the number to call is 1-800-327 or 448-3284 if you want to actually ask a question or make a point. Now, after the weather system or the hurricane or the storm or what disaster scenario that might confront us, what do we do after?
Well, you look around, ensure that if you're in the shelter, you should try to get back, ensuring that it is safe to get back to your home, your home structure, to find out exactly what has transpired. If you're in your house, you should ensure that if you need medical attention, that you seek medical attention. If you do not need medical attention, ensure that your surroundings are fit. That means that all the hazards are reduced in terms of waterways are cleared, and they do not pose a threat to you in terms of any flooding, in terms of any debris along in the immediate vicinity of your home. Ensure that debris are cleared, and I mentioned earlier on the fallen landlines and stuff which may pose a electrocution threat.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be mindful of all these things, because the high winds may have downed power lines. In terms of waterways, you may still have some waterways that may be flooded.
We have a call on your line. Good evening. Hello? Yeah, good night.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly, yeah.
Oh, yes, good night. A very good program. I want to ask Mr. James or somebody else to speak to you. Many times people have a tendency of, let's say, for instance, they say there's a flood watch, and nothing happens, but they still rain.
Mm-hmm.
People have a tendency to blame the authorities or blame the forecasters. I want you to speak to that, because is it an exact science? I mean, is it a forecast, something that you see on your satellite or what have you, giving you an indication? You know, and sometimes people say, well, boy, I went and I prepared and everything, and nothing happened. I want you to speak to that a little bit. I had another question, but just speaking. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to say thank you for the question. That is something that we have been trying to get people to come to terms with. The understanding that meteorology and the study of weather is not an exact science as to when it comes to forecasting. We work with probabilities. We give you the chance, the possibility of something happening, and depending on the circumstance and what we may see can happen, we let you know what the possible risks are. We will change the terminologies, what we say, based on how imminent it is. If we think it is going to happen, we will let you know by placing things like warnings in terms of cyclones. If we think that is possible, we will give you a watch. And the same concept can be added to the flood watches and warnings. If we tell you that it's going to flood, or we put a flood watch in place, it's because we think it is possible. Now, could there be a chance that it does not happen? Yes, there is that chance. But we think that is something possible, and you should be on the alert. So when you leave your homes, if you have to leave your home, you should be prepared as such. Because you do not want, when the Met Office is right, that you are caught not being able to be safe. And if we say it's a warning, then there's a high expectation. We expect something to happen, and you should be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So listen to the terminologies, understand what they mean, and still take into consideration that these are probabilities, because any small change in the elements, in what is going on in the atmosphere, could dramatically change where the results affect or where the different flooding may happen. So you have to consider everything as a whole and not just as one singular point saying that this area will flood or this area will not, and this time it will happen or this time it will not. We work with probabilities and the chance of things happening, and we try to communicate as best as possible those uncertainties.
Okay, let us move as we migrate to another very important topic here tonight on the issue of shelter activation, which is a very important component of our overall effort to properly manage and to respond to a disaster situation. And over the years, your government has placed tremendous emphasis on ensuring that we not only increase but improve in our capacity to shelter people who may be in need of shelter. We have built specifically the type of structures to shelter our people. That's something we take very seriously as a government, and putting the people central to our overall national agenda as a government and as a people. So tell us, Mr. Tuse, in terms of what we have been able to do as a country in improving, and increasing our capacity to shelter people during a situation where people are going to be in need of shelters. And maybe you may want to amplify a bit. When do we actually think it is necessary to actually activate our shelters?
Let me say a very pleasant good evening to you, Honorable Minister, and good evening to your listeners. Good evening to Ms. Riley from CDIM, and of course my good friends from the Met Office and ODM. It's always a pleasure. I must say overall our shelter stock in Dominica has significantly improved. And in part that is due to government's comprehensive housing development program, where hundreds of families were assisted in terms of building back better following Maria. We have, of course, the apartment building that were constructed in various communities in Dominica that, of course, assisted a number of families. And very importantly, as you mentioned, the 3 regional shelters that we have in Jimit with a capacity of 150, Jimit with 500, Layu with 150 capacity, and Casibros. They've all boosted in terms of our shelter capacity in Dominica. So overall, in Dominica, we have a lot more shelter capacity as opposed to shelter needs. So let me explain. The number of people who require to go to the shelters in Dominica is a lot less than the capacity. So we have an overall, for example, we have an overall shelter capacity of 8,600. That is, we can take in 8,600 people. However, our shelter needs for the population of persons required to be taken in state shelters is less than 4,000. And so you have a shelter need of less than 4,000 as opposed to a shelter capacity of 8,600. That's overall. That's the overall figure that we have in Dominica. So clearly we are on track. We have made significant strides. So we have a lot more shelter capacity as opposed to the number of persons that are required to take to state shelters. All right?
As you did, two questions were asked concerning various communities. One, the people at Emsall, historically, provision was made for them at the grammar school, but the grammar school is under construction, and so what these people who are in need in those areas to be sheltered and need that in the event that is required, we have an alternate plan for them.
Oh yes, we do. We've taken that into consideration, and what we've done, we have strategically looked at structures that are available, and to, well, I won't say to our surprise, but we're very much pleased that formerly the State College, the Teachers College, now that is used for the Petit Savant Primary School. We have identified that. In addition to that, we also have additional space at the Roseau Primary School, so we can accommodate all of those individuals who were being sheltered at the Dominica Grammar School, now to the, let's say, the Petit Savant Primary School, formerly the Teachers College. And so we'll cover the people in Emsall, Baffra State, we talk about entire Roseau Central. All of those areas will be covered by both the Teachers College and, of course, the Roseau Primary School. So we have taken that on board, and we have made that allocation.
And also, not to put you on the spot, and we have spoken about that, and the people of Bellevue, I know, Mr. Pascal, that we have made some provision for the people of Bellevue, and also, do you want to also speak to that too? People of Bellevue.
Oh yes. And I will speak of even more than Bellevue. There are other areas.
There are other areas, but I want to make sure that when we speak about, in terms of our capacity, we have more capacity than we had before. For a matter of fact, we can accommodate 8,000 plus, and only 4,000 plus are going to need shelter if the case arises. But we want to put that into context, because maybe people listening saying about, what about me in that area there? So we want to ensure that the areas that we had some concerns, that we have covered that.
Yes, we have covered. If I have to go through the entire,
I know that's what I'm saying.
It would be extensive.
But
as you mentioned, Bellevue, yes, we know that there are plans to enhance and to build a new primary school at the Bellevue Chopin, because that's what we used to use. And so we have made the allocation in terms of looking at a suitable facility, the community center, where people can, of course, be sheltered during the season. Similarly, in the Kalinago territory, the good thing about the Kalinago territory is a model, and I just wish that we can emulate this model. There is a neighborhood approach model, because we have a number of homes that were built in the Kalinago territory for families. And so the families are very accommodating. And given the fact that we have some challenges with regards to one of our schools, Salibi, I think, so they have developed, and we're very pleased, this neighborhood approach, right? We've already, identified all of the individuals in the 8 hamlets in the Kalinago territory who needs to be taken to shelters. And of course, they identified as well the neighborhood approach, the homes that would accommodate those individuals. So that is as well is taken care of. I can go on fast saying there are some communities where we don't have in the communities designated shelters, but we have already identified shelters for those areas. And we're talking of places like Miro at the John Caleb Lora Primary School. We're talking of Koliho at the regional shelter in Layu. We're talking of Kulbistri at the Monrachet Resource Center. We're talking of Layu Park Sultan to be taken to the Jimit Regional Shelter, and a number of other areas. And of course, one may clearly understand, with the advent of the regional shelters in the 3 regional shelters, it's just makes life a lot more easier for us. For example, the Jimit Shelter, we are catering for everyone from Canefield back to Taru. And even if we do that, there is still some space to take additional people. So we're catering from Kenfield. So we do not have any shelter in Kenfield. From Kenfield to Taro, everyone goes to the regional shelter. And we will still have some more space in that regional shelter to accommodate other persons. So that in itself, it's a good thing. As far as that is concerned, I'm happy that Fitzroy mentioned the importance of people understanding. First, you have to know your shelter. Yeah, no, and I'm happy that we're having this program so people understand, because, as you know, Honorable Minister, I'll be saying, but so where my shelter?
Yeah, I know.
So where my shelter? We don't have a shelter in, let's say, Collier. We don't have a shelter in Collier, so what happened to Collier people? And that's why we sought to explain to the people. We have covered every single community. Every single community in Dominica is covered. What is important is for us to enhance the public education within that setting so that people understand that that's your shelter, that's a provision that has been made by the state to ensure that you are safe and secure. And I'm happy that Fitzroy mentioned the need for people to understand. And not only understand, but importantly, I often mention the 4 tiers of responsibility as far as shelter management is concerned. We have the individual responsibility. You have an individual, and Fitzroy mentioned some of it. You, as an individual, have the responsibility to protect yourself and your safety. And the state is providing the shelter for you. It's just all well and good that you take the requisite measures, ensuring that, and I'll get to it, ensuring that you come into the shelters. We often say, do not come with your hands swinging. So you come in with your, the thing is, and I must say, Honorable Minister and folks who are listening and are viewing, that I often say the shelter is not a hotel, right? So, and the thing is, the sheltering is in the first instance is 24 hours. It's just to ride the storm, right? So we provide this shelter for you to ride the storm. After which, as Fitzroy indicated, that we would expect that following the event and the all clear is given, you exit the shelter and you go to your home to do an assessment of what has happened to your property and your structure and things of that nature. That's the expectation. But to continue in terms of...
Before you move to... Because you're saying it's 24 hours. Let us suppose, hypothetically, then you go home to check your home and you have no home. Your house is de-roofed. So then what was meant to have been for 24 hours, that scenario would have changed.
Oh yes. So that's why I said in first instance,
right.
It's 24 hours. Having done the assessment, go to your home. Of course, you do not have a home. Obviously, we have to expand the activation of the shelters because obviously we have to ensure that people are safe. And that is why, but I'm saying in the first instance, we open the shelters in the first instance for at least to ride the storm. That's what it is. Following an assessment, it would be determined whether we have medium to long-term sheltering as far as that is concerned. Now, I think you mentioned when do we activate? Of course, we are guided by, of course, once there is an impending system, there are several meetings conducted or done by NIPO. NIPO, of course, chaired by the Honorable Prime Minister, of course, and you, of course, the Prime Minister's deputy in terms of NIPO. And a determination would be made. Now, prior to that, even before we activate, once, based on the advisories, there is a possibility, even if a watch is issued, we place shelter managers on alert. We place them on alert for the possible activation. So that means placing you on alert, meaning that you have to go to the shelters, get the keys for the shelter, ensure that the shelter is in some way, well, kind of prepared. Because once you're on alert, it means, therefore, you have to take certain actions. Alert means there is a possibility that will activate. And soon as there's activation, we expect it to be open for the general public so that people can come in. But once the determination is made that we are going to the possibility or the probability of we being impacted, and I must say, as happened during burial, we had to take some action in terms of the activation of the regional shelter in Cassibus. And for the reason that it was then anticipated that we'll have had between 2 to 4 inches of rain, and you know the east. The east is really vulnerable to land slippage and other hazards, and so we had to do that. So once we would activate the shelters, so once a determination has been made by the NIPO that shelters are to be activated, a time will be given, right? And of course, well in advance, the time will be given. NIPO don't normally tell you that we're going to take a thing and then it's 11, inform you 11 o'clock and it's 10 o'clock. No. Normally there's sufficient time given for the activation. So once shelters are activated, they're open, we are expecting people. Even before activation, people should be ready. You have made the determination that you need to be taken to a shelter. You should be ready. Your kit, your stuff should be ready. You should have your bottles of water. You should have your canned food. You should have your biscuits, your medication, and all of those things should be in a kit, in a go bag. Fitzroy call it a go bag. You should have that go bag. And so once we activate, we expect people to come to the shelters. Oftentimes, what happens, people wait, and that's the chaos sometimes happens. People wait the last minute when they actually see the tropical storm force winds. That's the time people come to the shelter. No, we are encouraging everyone. Once we have opened and we have activated the shelter, immediately, people should proceed. The mechanism, the community-based mechanism, should be put in place to allow and to facilitate people to get to those shelters. All of them.
Okay. Now, somebody's coming to a shelter, as you said, for at least for the first 24 hours. What would you advise the people who are coming, or the person who is coming to the shelter, to carry with him?
Oh, very, very important. Yeah. So that's good. I'm happy we are saying that, because I often say don't come with your hand swinging. So we expect you to take in some water, right? We say at least between 4 to 6 bottles of water, the big ones. We're saying that. We're saying some biscuits, some canned food, not a whole heap, but something, 1 or 2. Importantly, people with medication, you must come with your medication, because we know people on medication and it's important. So you come with your medication. We're asking people, sometimes people, we don't have the bank books anymore, but we have seen people come with their land titles, Yeah, people have come to this because they feel that, it's safer with me.
Of course.
And we're saying, fine, come with your land titles. Those, we know some people have bank books still. Come with your cards, come with your stuff. Come with a few dollars, as they say it, So come with those things, because the thing is, it's important. It's important that you come in, because obviously you're coming to ride a storm, and we expect you to be comfortable, but you have to make yourself comfortable. So what we're saying, you come with those stuff, right? So we're saying there's some things that you have to come with, and I've outlined them, and I'm going to say some of the things you should not come with, right? So. And that takes us to because there are laws, there are rules and regulation in the shelters. And of course, ultimately, the laws of the land stands. All right? So don't believe it's where we are being impacted by a system and all of a sudden all hell break loose. Not at all. The law of the land stands. So, no weapons. And weapons, we are defining weapons not only as guns, knife. We're talking about spoons. We're talking about, if I can use the word well, eating utensils. So,
yes.
We're talking about those things. Scissors. Ice prickers, all of those things are weapons, and none of those will be allowed on the compound. Absolutely no smoking, no intake of alcohol, absolutely not. No pets are allowed, so we are encouraging folks, if you have your little dog and your little Chihuahua and your German Shepherd, we're asking you to find within your plan, within your family and your individual plan, you have to ensure there's a mechanism for the safety of the animals. We don't want no animal cruelty, as they call it, but at the same time, we are not allowing animals or pets at the shelter. In fact, just yesterday, someone was saying, what if you don't extend and find a way in the shelter to have only pets? So one room, you just put pets. Little dogs and little things and little cats and stuff like that. No, I know that came up and someone said, yeah, because at least, people are concerned. But yeah, so none of those things. We are encouraging people, even within the 24 to 48 hours, you have to ensure that the shelter is clean. You mustn't people litter and people just throw things. No, you have to ensure that the place is clean, is hygienic. So everyone has to have that responsibility to ensure that it's hygienic, it is clear, it is safe, and very importantly, we're asking people to be each other's brother, each other's keeper. we're in a situation, we have activity in the shelter. You have some fellow elderly people who don't like noise. And so oftentimes when it's noisy, we do not want to infringe on the rights of our senior citizens who don't like so much noise. Let's be each other's brother, each other's keeper. Of course, we should pray every time. Every day we should pray. But even in that situation, we should even pray more. And so we should be prayerful. I know there's anxiety and all of those things, but let us be each other's brother. Let's be each other's keeper. And let's each of us take responsibility. Let us help. I mean, we are all in it together in the shelter environment. And what is so difficult? That we help each other, that we care for each other, that we volunteer. Very importantly, the approach that we've used sometimes is to allow to use the people who are sheltering, or what we call the shelterists, to execute. Sometimes we can use shelterists to do some security. Security don't mean you're going to bust people and stuff like that, but basically to ensure that we're secure, we are cool. So that is the kind of division of labor that we're looking at in terms of when we are sheltering, when we have people in the shelters. And let me just so inform that there's also going to be a registration. That is very critical. And so we're encouraging people that we're going to register. We're going to ask you a few questions and take in some information, because at the end of the day, we want to know the number of people who are there, not only the number of people, how many males, females, children, persons with certain challenges, health and otherwise. So we're going to ask a few questions. The shelter manager will ask you a few questions and take some information. And we're encouraging people when that information is asked of you. It's not information that's very difficult, because we would like to know, for example, if you're diabetic, because we know why. So we would like to, when we're reporting to NIPO, we're reporting that in this shelter, we have 18 diabetics, we have 4 people who are hypertensive, and that kind of thing. That's important for the health subcommittee to help us in that regard in terms of if we have any medical challenges and things of that nature. And importantly and ultimately, we of course have to report the number of people we have in the shelters and what has happened. So that is very important. So while all of this is happening, there is the administrative part taking place, because we have to ensure that we know who's there, what the challenges they have, and of course when we are doing closure to the shelter, that a report will be given as far as the shelter is concerned.
And while we're speaking to this very important subject matters, specific to how do we manage the respective shelters, and the number of trainings we have had over the years, and to ensure that we train as many people as possible from a community standpoint. But as Victor is there, we're also ensuring that we have the skill sets to manage the respective shelters in the event that people were to stay there beyond 24 hours, and to ensure that we have people with the skill sets and the thing that you have demarcated here tonight in terms of knowing people's specific needs, etc., and what kind of meals, of course, if you have to prepare meals that people would need, etc., and we'll have people, how many cooks would you need for a shelter? Do you need to have a nurse there, etc.? Those are some of the things that we have finalized within the ministry to ensure that our shelters, once activated, and people would maybe, because of the circumstances, are going to be allowed to stay there beyond the 24 hours, so that people's need can be catered for. I just wanted to insert that into the discussion.
Oh, yeah. Yes, but most definitely. The thing is, because we think capacity building is critical, and you mentioned it. And over the years, what we've been doing, and people may look at it as a simple thing, but shelter management is broad. It's critical, but at the same time, it's wide range. And so I will give you an example. For us we do shelter management training over a 2-day period. That's how diverse it is, over a 2-day period, because there's several subject areas that you have to look at. We have to look at certain issues in terms of children, persons with disabilities, and things of that nature. So that is very critical to have the human resource development as far as shelter management is concerned, because gone are the days, in the early 80s, when people simply see shelter management as just a simple thing.
Open the key.
Yeah. Gone are the days when you simply see shelter management is just opening for people, let them enter and check their vibes, as we say it in local palace. These days are gone. It's more comprehensive. People have to have certain capacity. We've even gone ahead and giving people certification, not big thing, but when we do the 2-day training, people get their certificate. Yeah, they get a certificate in the 2-day certificate that for participation in this training. And so what we've done is even prospective. So for example, last year we even looked at prospective. We even trained prospective shelter managers, not necessarily persons who are current shelter managers, but prospective, because you have to ensure that in the future you have sufficient manpower in terms of shelter management. So we are critically looking at that as well, in ensuring that we build that capacity. And while I'm on that, I really want to commend and say hats off to all our shelter managers in Dominica. They have been doing an excellent job. They continue to do an excellent job, and we need to clearly recognize them. And I want to say hats off to them. Hats off to people on the various shelter subcommittees and shelter teams, disaster management committees, district disaster management committees, and all of those individuals who have been contributing significantly towards enhancing our shelter management experience in Dominica. We really want to recognize their efforts.
Yeah, I also want to join my add to your voice and join with you to highly commending those people who have been volunteering from a community standpoint, and as you rightly said, the various disaster committees who have been very proactive, very much involved over the years, and that of course contribute to making your work easier and more efficient. And I think we have to really highly commend them for giving service to the communities and the country on a whole. Now, what we're running out of time here tonight, and I know that we could have spent the whole night speaking here tonight on these various aspects of our preparedness and management insofar as disaster is concerned. We have Miss Riley who has to go move on. She has had a long day. So what we're going to do right now is to allow her to give some concluding remarks, and we'll do the same with Itoma and yourself and then Mr. Pascal. Miss Riley, good evening again. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I really have to commend you for this program, and also for the contributions from the persons who are online. I think it has been so comprehensive in terms of the information shared, and I know the public is benefiting. I want to close on 2 points, Minister, and it's really some observations that we've been making. The first is related to climate change, and the reality that climate change is resulting in some dynamics around not only the traditional hydrometeorological hazards, but it's also introducing some new concerns like heat, excess heat. We're seeing those kinds of warnings coming out in the region, but they're also creating some complex situations when they are overlaying with other types of hazards, like we saw in the volcanic eruption in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And what we're also seeing is that traditionally, damage and loss to buildings, infrastructure, critical infrastructure has always been the indicator for our English-speaking Caribbean states for many years now. But we are seeing some changes. For example, in Beryl, displacement is a big issue. We've seen it in Beryl, we've seen it in Irma and Maria in 2017, we saw it in Dorian in 2019 as well. And it really links back into this conversation that you're having around shelters, because it really means we have to look at resilient construction, because the first thing should be home as shelter. That really should be our first point. And as I drove around the impacted states over the last few days in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and now here in Grenada, what has struck me is that even in the midst of a statistic like 98% of the houses being destroyed, you found houses that were standing. Roofs were intact. Walls were intact, and in fact, they looked as if Beryl had never passed through. And it reinforces the point that our engineers have been making to us, that it is possible to build, and more we're getting information that the costs associated with building to Cat 5 winds and Richter scale 7 earthquakes. It is not as onerous as the discussion previously was. And one of our regional engineers, Grenville Phillips, has done amazing work with a code of practice that we've just done with CrossQ. And this is going to be taught as a part of the CARICOM vocational qualification across our states. And these are the kinds of changes that we really need to make in our Caribbean space to really build resilience. The other thing is that we now have situations where the humanitarian side of events is significant for the Caribbean. In this instance, we had approximately just over 11,000 persons who were affected by this event, significantly so that we had to mobilize extensive humanitarian relief, water, food. And if this is going to be our reality, it really means that we have to adjust our thinking, our policies, our practices with respect to how we are approaching natural hazards as well as technological hazards in this region, and how we're really going to strengthen the construction and in that way better protect our people. So thanks again. It's been great to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Minister, and it's been wonderful to be on the panel with the other members as well.
Thank you very much, and I'm so happy and so pleased to have listened to you here tonight. And of course, what you have just articulated in your concluding remarks is basically consistent with what Dominica has been promoted, consistent with what the Prime Minister has been saying post-Mario. And as we embark to make Dominica the first climate resilient country in the world. I can recall having a discussion with you when you came to Dominica, and you said when you drove around, you were so impressed to have seen the level of development and how you had embarked on that posture of resilience. And I think that speaks to the core of our commitment, realizing that we have to, if we are to survive in our current space, there are certain things that we have to do. We have to build back better. We have to significantly improve on our building codes. And of course, as you know, that the type of houses that we're building in Dominica are hurricane-proof. And I'm happy that you're making reference to that, the need that we have to emphasize, the importance of that, the way we construct our roads, etc., all these things. And so I'm happy that the discussion is centered around housing and, of course, shelters. And I think that in itself demonstrates our commitment as a country, and also I hope our commitment as a region, that if we are to survive in our current space, there are certain things that we must do, and that is to boost at all times, at every level, on our resilience. So thank you very much. Hope to see you soon. It's in December, of course, willing, if I'm still around, if we're still around, for our next meeting. Hope we can see before that, Ms. Riley.
Thank you very much.
And God bless you. And get some rest, eh? Yeah.
Thank you, will do.
Okay. So let us now go across to Mr. Aitoma. And I want to, again, Aitoma, commend you for your tremendous work so far. And I think I have been looking at GIS, and I'm seeing very impressive weather reports, and I just hope we can remain on that line, and maybe we can have it every night instead of 3 times a week. But it's a move in the right direction. Yes, your concluding remarks, please.
Okay, well, I would just like to take the opportunity to just inform people that the Met Office, we view ourselves as an alerting agency. Our job really, our role in this hurricane season and in most of what we do is to inform the general public of what to expect. And if there is a case where we are informing you and we are giving information and you do not completely understand, it means that you will not be able to activate your plans in the way that you should. So just want to take the opportunity to invite the general public to reach out to the Met Office, listen for when the Met Office and the ODM, most times we have programs that are geared at educating, giving you, the general public, the opportunity to ask questions and clarify different things that you may have some level of confusion in. Just attend these meetings, because we really go out and try to make it a point of duty to inform the people of what there is. If we can break down the information, we will break it down. If we cannot break down that information, we will do our best to have you understand the information and to know what you should do when you hear some of these terms. I just want to take the opportunity again to thank the staff of the Met Office. This is not a one-man job. This is something that we have a really talented group of people coming together and putting in efforts to make sure that all of the different things that we have been doing gets done. We have the forecasters, we have the different observers at all levels. I think we are doing a tremendous job. We have been doing what we think we can do to engage some of the younger folks. We know that sometimes people may not always listen to the radio, so we have been trying our best to increase our presence on the social media platforms and just trying our best to get the information out there as best as possible. So I just want to use this opportunity to ask people that if you do not understand what it is that we are saying, then reach out and ask a question. We will gladly help and try to clarify what it is that we mean when we say what we say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jameson. All the best on you and your hardworking staff. I wish you the best. And let us go across to Mr. Tuse. Yes.
I just want to say that preparedness is the key. Right? Preparedness is the key. And we're encouraging everyone from a national standpoint to activate your plan. Activate your plan. Your plan should have already been activated. In other words, you're ready. Activate your family plan, your individual plan, the community plan. And importantly, your shelter go kit should have already been in place. If it's not in place, get it. What I mean by the shelter go kit is the things that you need to come to the shelter. Your little food, your documents if necessary, and all of those little things that you need to come to the shelter. And very importantly, we are encouraging people, once we have activated the shelters, within 20 minutes we should see the shelter filled with people, within 20 minutes of activation, within half an hour, and not 4 hours later when we're in the middle of the storm. No. So within 20 minutes to half an hour, we expect people to be at those shelters. And please help each other. Be each other's brother, be each other's keeper.
Yes, I want to also commend you too, because you've always been at the forefront and actually providing information to the public. And I've always seen you at the comment center whenever it's activated, even if the last time you got blocked as a result of a very significant event. But you did in fact get there. And I've seen you, Mr. Aitoma. So you guys are don't only actually stay at the respective departments, but when the command center is activated, you guys make you guys available. And I want the public to understand that you guys are very committed to what you do. And Mr. Pascal, are you there? I see you. Are you hiding or something? I can't see you.
I'm still there.
Okay,
sir.
thank you. Right, fine. Yes, yeah.
So I want to reiterate, planning ahead of, if it's for a weather event, ahead of the hurricane season. I want us to adopt preparedness as a lifestyle. Mr. Tusa just mentioned it, but I want us to make it a everyday thing. Preparedness. I want us to also, to a certain extent, test our plans. As an individual, you can hold a little simulation and test yourself to see how well you execute that plan you have. I want the general public to join the ODM in its continued public awareness campaign. We've been trying our best to go into the communities. We have our radio program every Tuesday. We're trying to be more creative. I think we're planning to go into the supermarkets. We want to have a road show, and we will continue our public education in the schools. So we're taking disaster management seriously, and we want the public on an individual level to embrace disaster management and also take it seriously.
Yes, I was very much impressed with the actual effort that you embarked on together with the schools in the Southern District. And I'm hoping that we can replicate that in other districts. And because if we're going to make it disaster management a lifestyle, it has to be part of maybe the programs within a school setting. So it can be part of our national psyche from a very early age within a child. And that is the kind of effort that your government is actually putting in the whole issue, giving significance, of course, to disaster management. And we will continue as a ministry to promote and to educate and to edify on that very important matter. And we will not relent until it actually becomes a lifestyle phenomenon. And for that to become a reality, therefore, we have to be prepared. And people are better prepared when the relevant information is provided to all and sundry. And that is why the ministry will continue to advocate and to present to the public. So continue to listen to the number one station, remain positive, and of course, your government will continue to do its best to ensure that Dominica is the best place to live and to enjoy. Have a nice night. Thank you, folks, for being here tonight. And thank you to our wonderful listeners, those of you in Dominica and further afield. Thank you.
Let not your hearts be troubled. Wipe away your tears and fears. 'Cause I know love will conquer evil. Living in the positive.